Have you ever found yourself doing something you didn't want to do? Saying yes when you meant to say no, or completely changing your plans? All because someone made you feel guilty. If so, you've been caught in one of the most effective traps of psychological manipulation, and you're not alone. Guilt is a weapon that manipulators wield with precision, and it works so well because it targets something we all have: a conscience, a sense of responsibility, and a desire to be good people. The truly unsettling part? Most of us never see it coming. The difference between genuine guilt, the healthy kind that helps us become better people, and manipulated guilt is like the difference between a mirror and a weapon. One reflects truth. The other is designed to wound. Throughout this video, we're going to peel back the layers of how manipulators weaponize guilt to take control of your decisions, your time, and ultimately, your freedom. We'll walk through the exact tactics they use, show you how to spot them in real time, and most importantly, give you practical strategies to reclaim your autonomy. If you've ever felt trapped by someone else's emotional demands, this video is for you. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss insights that could fundamentally change how you interact with the people in your life. Now, let's start with something uncomfortable. We've all been manipulated before. Maybe it was a family member, a romantic partner, a friend, or even a colleague at work. The mechanics are always the same, and once you understand them, you'll start seeing them everywhere. The victim role, the most effective trap. The first major tactic manipulators use is something I call performing victimhood, and it's devastatingly effective. Here's how it works. The manipulator consistently portrays themselves as suffering, broken, or wronged. But here's the psychological trick. They don't just tell you they're suffering. They make sure you feel responsible for fixing it. Imagine a parent who constantly tells their adult child about their various ailments, their loneliness, their financial struggles, and their heartbreak, but always in a way that subtly implicates the child. I wouldn't be so depressed if you visited more often. If you hadn't moved away, I wouldn't feel so abandoned. The child didn't cause the parent's depression, and their location isn't actually the root of the parent's loneliness, but the manipulator has carefully crafted a narrative where the victim is the invisible villain. What makes this tactic so insidious is that it exploits our empathy. We're wired to help people who are suffering, especially people we care about. Manipulators know this, and they weaponize it. They might exaggerate their pain, fabricate stories, or conveniently forget to mention the context that would make them look less sympathetic. The goal is singular: make you feel so responsible for their well-being that you'll do whatever it takes to ease their suffering, even if it means sacrificing your own well-being. The person caught in this trap finds themselves constantly trying to fix the manipulator, constantly trying to prove their loyalty, constantly trying to be enough. It's exhausting, it's endless, and it's by design. Because no matter what you do, there's always another problem, another tragedy, another reason you should feel guilty for not doing more. Shifting the blame, rewriting reality. The second major tactic is blame shifting, and it's perhaps the most reality distorting of all manipulation tactics. Here's what happens. When a manipulator makes a mistake or engages in harmful behavior, instead of owning it, they twist the narrative. Suddenly, you become the villain of their story. Let's say a partner cancels plans at the last minute without explanation, leaving you frustrated. Instead of acknowledging their inconsideration, they say, "If you hadn't been so demanding about my time, I wouldn't have had to bail on you." Notice what happened? Their action, canceling plans, becomes a reaction to your alleged failure. Or consider a friend who betrays your confidence, then when confronted says, "Well, if you hadn't put me in such an awkward position by telling me in the first place, I wouldn't have had to say anything." This is psychological sleight of hand. The manipulator is rewriting the cause and effect relationship so that their behavior becomes your responsibility. Your refusal to accept this blame becomes the proof of your guilt. "You won't even apologize for what you did to me," they say, even though you did nothing wrong. The goal is to make you second-guess your own memory, your own perception, and your own reality. What makes this particularly damaging is that it can make victims doubt their own judgment. Over time, People caught in this trap start to accept the false narrative. They start believing they're the problem. They start apologizing for things they didn't do wrong. They start taking on guilt that was never theirs to carry. Appealing to your conscience. The moral trap. Now, let's talk about one of the most subtle manipulation tactics. The direct appeal to conscience. This tactic works by exploiting your own moral code against you. Manipulators understand that most of us have internalized standards about what makes a good person, a good partner, a good friend, or a good family member. A manipulator might say, a real friend would do this for me. A loving partner wouldn't hesitate to help me. A good son or daughter would put their parents' needs first. These statements create a false equation where your refusal to comply becomes evidence of your moral failure. What makes this tactic particularly effective is that it contains a grain of truth. Yes, good people do help their friends. Love does involve sacrifice, and family members do care for one another. But the manipulator exploits this by setting unreasonable expectations. They blur the line between genuine responsibility and manipulation by wrapping their demands in the language of morality. Think about a spouse who says, if you were really committed to this marriage, you would quit your job and support my business ventures. Or a friend who says, real friends don't set boundaries. They're just there, no questions asked. These statements don't just ask for compliance. They attack your moral character if you refuse. The victims of this tactic often find themselves overextending because they've internalized the message that refusing means they're a bad person. They sacrifice their own well-being, their own goals, their own values, all because they've been convinced that being moral requires self-abandonment. It's one of the cruelest aspects of this form of manipulation because it weaponizes our best qualities, our conscience, our compassion, our sense of responsibility. The silent treatment. Punishment through absence. Sometimes manipulation doesn't require words at all. The silent treatment is a form of nonverbal punishment that creates an environment of anxiety and guilt. When a manipulator withdraws all communication, ignores your attempts to connect, and creates a wall of silence, they're sending a clear message. You've done something wrong, and you need to fix it. The person on the receiving end of this tactic experiences genuine psychological distress. Humans are social creatures, and the withdrawal of connection feels like a threat. The brain interprets silence as rejection, and rejection triggers survival instincts. The victim becomes hypervigilant, desperately searching for what they did wrong, and equally desperate to do whatever it takes to restore the relationship. What's insidious about this tactic is that it's often impossible to address directly. If you ask, "Why are you ignoring me?" the manipulator might respond with more silence, or they might say, "You know what you did," without ever specifying the actual transgression. This creates a no-win situation where the victim is left guessing, apologizing for things they may not have actually done, and doing whatever the manipulator wants in hopes of restoring peace. The silent treatment is particularly damaging in intimate relationships and family structures because it weaponizes the connection that should be safe. It turns closeness into a tool of control, and it teaches victims that their voice, their feelings, and their needs don't matter. If you loved me, the ultimate guilt equation. Perhaps the most direct guilt induction comes from this statement. If you loved me, you would do this. This phrase creates a mathematical equation in the manipulator's mind. Love equals compliance. Any refusal to meet their demands becomes evidence that you don't actually love them. This tactic is devastatingly effective in romantic relationships and parent-child dynamics because love is sacred. We all want to be loved, and we all want to love well. When someone suggests that your refusal to comply with their demands is evidence that you don't love them, they're touching on one of our deepest vulnerabilities. A partner might use this to isolate you from friends. If you really loved me, you'd stop hanging out with them. A parent might use this to prevent independence. If you really loved me, you'd stay close to home. A friend might use this to demand loyalty to harmful behavior. If you really loved me, you'd have my back, no questions asked. What makes this particularly manipulative is that it confuses genuine love with unlimited compliance. Love, in its healthiest form, involves boundaries, honesty, and sometimes saying no. But the manipulator has created a false definition where love means giving up yourself entirely. Victims caught in this trap often find themselves completely abandoning their own needs, their own values, and their own identity, all in pursuit of proving their love. Over time, this can create a deeply unhealthy dynamic where the victim is constantly trying to prove something that should never need proving. Real love doesn't require this kind of performative desperation. Recognizing the patterns, how to spot manipulation. Now that we've identified the major tactics, let's talk about how to recognize them before they take root. The first step is understanding that manipulation often happens gradually. It's not always obvious. Manipulators are skilled at making small requests that seem reasonable, then slowly escalating expectations. They're also skilled at making you question your own perception. One of the most important tools for recognizing manipulation is what I call your internal alarm system. Pay attention to how you feel. When someone makes a request and it causes you immediate anxiety, guilt, or shame, that's worth investigating. Your gut feeling is often picking up on something your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. Ask yourself these questions. Is this request reasonable? Is this person respecting my boundaries? Am I making this decision freely, or am I making it out of fear? Are they taking responsibility for their own actions, or are they consistently shifting blame? Do they respect my no, or do they use guilt and emotional tactics to override it? Another key indicator is consistency. How does this person treat you over time? Do they recognize when they've hurt you and take responsibility? Or do they minimize, deny, and blame shift? Do they respect your boundaries, even when it's inconvenient for them? Or do they guilt you into abandoning your boundaries? Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with this person. Do you feel energized and respected? Or do you feel drained, confused, and guilty? Healthy relationships leave you feeling better. Manipulative relationships leave you constantly questioning yourself. Reclaiming your autonomy. Practical strategies. Understanding manipulation is half the battle. The other half is learning to protect yourself. This requires developing what I call boundary literacy, the ability to understand your own limits and communicate them clearly. Start by getting clear on what you will and won't accept. What are your actual values? What do you need to feel safe in your relationships? What behaviors are you willing to tolerate? And what are absolute deal breakers? Write these down if it helps. Clarity is power, and you can't defend boundaries you haven't clearly defined. Once you know your boundaries, you need to communicate them with consistency and without apology. This is crucial. Manipulators often test boundaries to see how serious you are about them. If you waffle, if you apologize for setting a boundary, if you explain and justify your boundary as if it needs defending, you're signaling that it's negotiable. It's not. A boundary that's apologized for is a boundary that's already been weakened. When you find yourself feeling guilty about maintaining a boundary, pause and ask, whose guilt is this? Is this my genuine guilt about genuinely wronging someone, or is this guilt that's been imposed on me? There's an important difference. Genuine guilt serves a purpose. It tells us when we violated our own values. Manipulated guilt serves only the manipulator. Another critical strategy is seeking external validation and perspective. Manipulators thrive in isolation. When you talk to outside people, a trusted friend, a therapist, a mentor, you're getting reality checks. You're seeing how your situation looks to someone not emotionally invested in controlling you. This outside perspective is invaluable for breaking free from the manipulator's narrative. You also need to understand that you are not responsible for managing someone else's emotions. You're responsible for your own behavior and your own emotional well-being, but you are not responsible for making sure someone else never feels sad, angry, or disappointed. When a manipulator tries to make you feel guilty for their emotional state, remember this: their feelings are not your fault, and fixing their feelings is not your job. Finally, practice saying no and tolerating the discomfort that follows. Manipulators often count on the fact that their victims will do anything to avoid conflict or disapproval. If you can sit with the discomfort of someone being upset with you, truly sit with it without immediately trying to fix it, you become immune to one of manipulation's greatest weapons. The path forward Breaking free from guilt-based manipulation is one of the most important things you can do for your mental health and your freedom. It requires self-awareness, it requires courage, and it requires patience with yourself. But it's absolutely possible. Remember, feeling guilty doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Needing to set a boundary doesn't make you selfish. Protecting yourself doesn't make you unloving. And taking responsibility for your own emotional well-being doesn't make you abandoning your loved ones. It makes you healthy. As you move forward, be gentle with yourself. If you've been manipulated, that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you have empathy and conscience. Those are beautiful qualities. You're just learning to direct them toward people who deserve them rather than toward those who exploit them. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, if you've recognized these patterns in your own life, please share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And if you want more content about psychology, relationships, and protecting your mental health, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.